Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about It Follows and what it means to me in this podcast. So, when it comes to podcasts, I'm just going to be sort of shooting the shit on a specific movie, and today it just so happens to be It Follows. So, I've got a few articles pulled up here, and more specifically, they're not articles, they are just a little bit of information about the movie. It came out in 2014. It follows a teenager named Jay. She goes on a date with a boy, and after a sexual encounter with this boy, he tells her that he was using her as basically a pawn so that whatever demented thing is following him will stop following him and is now going to be following her. And the only way that she can get rid of it is if she has sex with another person to pass it on, or if she dies, it goes back to the previous person. The plot seems a little bit convoluted, but it's a pretty straightforward movie. So we've got Maika Monroe as Jay, and Jake Weary as Hugh. This movie had a budget of $2 million, and it made $23.3 million at the box office. So, first off, let me preface that I thoroughly enjoy this movie. It's one of my, I'd say, it's probably in my top 20, if not my top 15 favorite horror / thriller movies out there. The reason I like it so much is because it's very, I would say, the atmosphere throughout the movie feels very good. It's very carefree for the most part, and you just get sort of a sense that when it comes to film, if you've got a really good atmosphere, things will follow after that. Like, the atmosphere of the movie can be really good, but then if you really dig deep into the movie and realize that the plot completely sucks, the atmosphere can really boost a film's sort of rating overall. The atmosphere is sort of, it feels like you're in the 80s or 90s, but it's set in modern day. And the way they did this was they showed, like, inside the house, they've got an older TV, they've got, older cars that they drive. They don't drive, modern cars. And they try throughout the movie not to really show too much of, modern vehicles and modern technology. The only modern technology you really see that sort of tips you off at the beginning of the movie is one of Jay's, I believe it's one of her friends or one of her sisters. I think it's one of her friends, though, that is reading some sort of book on what looks like looks like a seashell / like makeup sort of mirror type thing. I've never seen like an electronic reader like that, but it was definitely interesting to just show that little tidbit to give the audience the information they need to know that it's based in modern day and not in the 80s. But what really pushes the, I guess you could say, 80s feel is the score in this movie. The score was made by Disaster Piece, and I have to say the score is top tier when it comes to horror movie scores. It just, everything about it really carries the movie throughout. The beginning scene with the girl running out of her house, and it shows, the long one take, that very heavy score that follows throughout that scene just makes you feel dread and anxiety throughout it. Okay, sorry about that. I had to clear my throat. But anyways, yeah, the score just really carries this movie to a whole new level. I would say for me and a lot of other people, when it comes to a rating on this movie, the score could easily push it up at least 1 point, if not a half a point. Um, and that's essentially how good the music and score throughout this movie is. Um, it was distributed by Radius TWC. I've never actually heard of them. Let me click on this link and just see here. Oh, it was that's why it was the Weinstein Company. Okay, we're not going to get into that. But yeah, this movie came out in 2014, which is very interesting to me because let me do a quick search here on 2014 horror movies. I want to see what other horror movies came out during this year. It doesn't look like too many great ones. Let's see. Unfriended, Creep is a good one. As Above, So Below is a good one. Let me go down this list. Tusk, The Babadook, The Voices. Okay. So 2014 seems like it was the year where horror movies were in a bit of limbo, you could say, because a lot of these movies, I guess Annabelle is really the only big budget, big production horror movie that people would know came out in 2014. But yeah, when It Follows came out, I didn't actually see it till 2016 or 2017, and I believe it's because It Follows got released into theaters in 2014, and then it didn't come out onto home video until 2016, which is, being that that's a 2-year gap, it's very unheard of that a movie would come out in theaters and then 2 years later come out on home video. And I guess I wouldn't say it's necessarily unheard of, but it's one of those things where typically a movie comes out in theaters right around, the time that it's supposed to come out, and then I would say within 3 to 4 months, they give it to sit in theaters, and then it comes out on home video. So It Follows, I want to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the reason why I saw it in 2016 was because right around 2016 to 2018, within that period of time, I believe Netflix was able to get the rights for it, and that's where I actually saw it for the first time, was on Netflix. Now, when you look at hold on, let me pull this up so I can get a reference. The It Follows poster seems intriguing to most. You've got like an old car, and you've got a couple kissing in the back, and that's going to intrigue a decent amount of people, I would say. Because typically with any movies that I watch, I would say at least 50, if not 60% of the time, the reason why I'm intrigued is because of the poster itself. And then with most movies, if I want to watch it, I'll read the plot, and then I'll watch it if it sounds interesting enough. But every once in a while, when it comes to movies, if I just see the poster, I'll just press play without knowing anything about it. And that's another reason why typically when trailers come out for movies, I try not to watch them. The only time I'll watch trailers if it's a movie that is one of those movies where I'm not going to be upset if there's some spoilers in the trailer. Most recently, I watched the trailer for Godzilla vs. Kong, only because those movies are fun to watch, and that's pretty much the extent to why I watch those types of movies. It's because they're just sort of the movies where there's a lot of action involved. There's going to be, you know, a lot of beautiful sets and stuff like that, and CGI is going to be fairly good, and so I can just kind of kick my feet back and watch it. So back to It Follows. As I was saying, it feels like a bit of an 80s atmosphere throughout the movie, and it has a lot to do with the way that the sets and stuff look and the locations look, and also the score really carries it. The score's got that very synthy type of feel to it, and when you hear a lot of synthesizer type sounds, a lot of people immediately think of, you know, like the 80s, especially, you know, like the mid 80s, when synthesizers were really sort of a thing. And now synthesizers are starting to come back, and me personally, I love listening to synthwave. It's very relaxing and very just a fun type of music genre to listen to. So I actually want to look at just normal movies that came out the year of It Follows, so I can get an idea of what was going on here. All right, let's see if I recognize any of these movies. Whiplash came out. The Guest, Tammy. Okay, so Interstellar. So it seems like Ex Machina. That's another good one. Birdman. Okay. All right. Nightcrawler. Okay. So I feel like It Follows also had one of those things where it sort of got drowned out by these other big movies. And I'm gonna search up the release date on It Follows just to get an idea. March 27th, 2015, which that was just a few days ago, March 27th. March 27th, 2015. That's weird because it came out in 2014. Yeah, the release date is very interesting with this movie. I'm not going to look past it too much. Watch options, let's see. It's free on Prime, Tubi, and Pluto TV. Okay. So, the reason I'm talking about this movie is because it's one of those movies that I feel like, for me, is a very good movie if, like, somebody's asking me, like, you know, hey, I hear that, you know, you're, you know, into watching horror movies. What movie would you suggest? And typically I like to come up with movies that aren't known. Like, if I know the person well enough and they ask me for a horror movie suggestion, depending on the person that they are, if I know that they've never seen too many horror movies, I can tell them, you know, have you seen Halloween? Have you seen A Nightmare on Elm Street? Have you seen Friday the 13th? And typically, even the casual movie watcher who doesn't watch horror movies that much has probably seen those. So then I like to sort of expand out just a little bit. And when asking people what to suggest for horror movies, that's a big question to be asking somebody, because there are so many horror movies out there and there's so many subgenres within the horror genre itself that it's very hard to narrow it down. So typically I would ask, like, do you like paranormal? Do you like you know, gory type stuff? Do you like psychological stuff? And, you know, if they bring up, you know, like, well, I just like, you know, horror in general, then typically I would suggest watching It Follows, because it's one of those movies where it's not necessarily scary, but if you're a movie watcher like me, where when I'm watching a movie, I pick up on little things that the normal watcher won't, like cinematography, score, plot development, characters, stuff like that. You kind of start to realize that It Follows is one of those movies that is quite scary if you think about it on a deeper note and a deeper level. When it comes to cast in this movie, Maika Monroe does a great job in this movie itself. I feel like she's really the only well-known, I'd say, actress in this movie. I'm just looking at the list of other actors. I'd say her and Jake Weary are like the two more known ones. I'm just going to take a look at the actor of Paul to see what movies he's been in because, um, okay, so he's got a pretty good list of movies. He was in The Good Neighbor and where's that other one? Dead Silence as well. So these all these actors do a great job, but I feel like Jay or Maika Monroe is really the one that is carrying this whole movie basically on her shoulders because she's got characteristics throughout the movie that really go up and down. You sort of see her in the beginning. She seems very calm and very, just friendly throughout the beginning of the movie. And then you sort of see as the movie goes on and she realizes that she's actually, being followed by this entity, that she sort of spirals down into sort of vulnerability. And you can see that her friends are realizing that, something is actually wrong. And typically, and I would say this is typical of a lot of these movies. You've got your main character trying to tell her friends that something really bad is happening and she needs help, and she's, pointing at this entity that only she can see. And so her friends are kind of like, you're throwing us off and we don't really believe you. And so she essentially has to show that she's not crazy and that things are actually happening right in front of their eyes that they can't see but that she can see. And so this movie overall is a really good movie. I would recommend it for the most part. The only thing I would say as far as gripes with the movie are, I think, what is it? One or two of the characters don't necessarily get an arc that I would like to. Like, I like to see characters that get some sort of arc. And the reason I like that is because it sort of wraps the whole movie up perfectly. I don't mind movies that end on like an open-ended sort of feel, but if it's going to be one of those types of endings, it has to be extremely well done. Like any movie that's got like an open-ended ending to it, you know that there's going to be a sequel and that gets a lot of people excited. But with this movie, it gives Jay an arc, which is good because she's the main character throughout this movie. But there's a couple characters that don't necessarily get an arc, and a lot of people could argue that they don't necessarily need an arc because they're not, the main characters throughout the movie. But I feel like every single character should have some form of an arc. And when it comes to an arc, it's sort of a double-edged sword because you've got an arc is good, which is the good side, but then the flip side of it is that the arc has to be good. If it's not a good arc, then a lot of people are going to be really let down about that. But overall, It Follows is a great movie. I would give it, I'd say, a 4.5 out of 5. I only really give movies 5s out of 5s if they're extremely well done in every single aspect of the movie. And I'm not saying that this movie isn't extremely well done in every single aspect, but there are just, little things in this movie that could have been improved upon just a little bit. The movie is an hour and 50 minutes long, which I would say is a good runtime for a movie. Typically, horror movies, they have, like an hour and a half, hour 40-minute runtime. This one probably could have been an hour and 40 minutes. They could have taken out a couple things that maybe dragged along just too much. But overall, I thoroughly enjoy this movie, and I suggest if you haven't seen it, give it a watch because you'll really get an understanding of why this movie is probably getting a cult following as the years go on. So I hope you guys enjoyed my little discussion on It Follows. I have a Patreon. If you'd like to support me and support the channel there, you can become a patron over there. I post stuff as much as I can. Typically, the things that I post are videos that are to be released. You'll get videos a day in advance, and you'll also get, I guess, just posts from me directly. You can direct message me on there and ask me, if there's any movies that I'm going to be doing in the future, and I should be able to get back to you within a day or two. I check my Patreon as much as I can, but if you don't have the money to do that, the next best thing is to just hit the like button. If you like this video, it helps reach a lot more people, and it helps grow the channel so that I can grow a community that likes to talk about horror movies. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.